Welcome back to the Flex Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike T. Nelson. On this podcast, we talk about all things to increase strength, performance, add muscle, do all this without destroying your health in a flexible framework. And today on the podcast, it is just me. I wanted to go over, since I'm recording this will be out today, Monday, December 23rd. It'll be out pretty close to that. It is Festivus. So as you probably know, I am a huge Seinfeld fan. And it seems odd that when I was teaching more in person, I forgot most students have never even seen the show Seinfeld, which was crazy. Like it, I think, ended before most of them were even born, which is wild. But as you probably remember from the famous Festivus show, which was December 23rd, one of the components of Festivus is the feats of strength. So today on the podcast, I wanted to talk about what are some feats of strength you should consider and what is some data on basic lifts. How strong is strong enough for both males and females? I also wanted to say the sponsors, we've got Tecton. So if you're looking for some ketone esters, it tastes pretty good. Especially compared to the other ones on the market by far. I'm drinking the red version here today, the Magma. Check them out. I am biased because I do scientific consulting for them, and I'm also an ambassador. Each can has 10 grams of a ketone ester, and the short version is there are ketone salts, which can be useful, but it's hard to get your ketone levels up really high with salts. The main reason is just the amount of salt you have to attach to the BHB. The ketone itself is going to be limited because your gut's going to get really pissed off. So the esters are a way to get higher levels of ketones. Downside, like I said, is almost all of the ones on the market I've ever had taste not just bad, like I would say pretty darn horrible. The one that Tecton uses is a BHB molecule bonded to glycerol, which is a different ketone ester. And the ester bond allows it to make it through digestion and increase blood levels and have it be used by cardiac tissue, brain tissue, and muscle tissue. I really like it as kind of a non-caffeinated way for cognitive work, especially if I've had a longer day. And even at higher doses, I've noticed it seems to help with some more grip-intensive strength training, especially on days where my fatigue level is a little bit higher. So check them out below. We've got a link. And then also check out LMNT. So if you're looking for a great electrolyte beverage, I guess you could say, it's a little stick packet you just add to your water. I typically add 1 stick packet per 1 liter of fluid. And I've been using this for, quite a while now. If you're eating a pretty whole food diet, you can be kind of shocked. Like when I've done analysis of different athletes, your sodium levels especially can be quite low. Most athletes do better with a little bit higher level of sodium. Now again, if your friend's diet is a floating trash bin fire and it's mostly processed food, like adding more sodium to that is just not really a good idea. But if you're eating mostly real food, especially if you're not salting your food a lot, you can end up being a little bit low on sodium. So I found this is a very simple way to increase performance, especially consistent energy levels. This is the biggest thing I've noticed. And also, if you do any periods of fasting, the Flex Diet Cert, which I'll have info on that coming up. That is super beneficial for that. So check out the link below for them. And then also, the Flex Diet Cert will open again in early January 2025. I will have the exact date to all of you next week, but it will be early in the month of January. So you want to stay tuned for that. You can get all the more info on the newsletter. Go to MikeTNelson.com, go to the top, go to newsletter, and you'll have all of the great information there. So that will be open again for only 1 week in Q1, which is going to be the first part of January 2025. So you want to get on the newsletter. I'm going to have some fast action bonus items there and some really cool stuff. So you don't want to miss that out. Miss out on that. Whatever. So today, talking about the Festivus Feats of Strength. And before I get into kind of what are data on some of the standards, number one I would say is have some sort of performance goal, even if your goal is body composition. Even with clients I have that compete in some form of physique, we still have goals that we want to see them hit, because performance, even if your goal is all out body comp and hypertrophy, that is what is going to drive how much muscle you can add, or if you're in a cutting phase, how much muscle you can hold on to. So again, performance, overload, volume, density, intensity, all those things are going to matter. And you may not be doing 1 RMs, you may do a 5 RM, 8 RM, it doesn't matter. But keeping an eye on performance is going to be the fastest way to reach your goals. Obviously, if you have performance goals, that makes complete sense. But I think in the land of body composition, people just tend to train too much to failure and just kind of wing it. Just go to any commercial gym and look at how many people even write anything down. I highly doubt all those people tapping away on their phone are entering their stuff into some type of digital database. I still like old school pen and paper. I can flip back super easy. I'm not getting distracted by my phone. Put on my little Bluetooth headphones and not worry about it. I can just write stuff down on pen and paper. It's very easy for me to track. You're taking a rest period anyway, so monitor your training performance. That would be my number one thing. Number two, whatever you want to work on, your goals are your goals. So pick something that you like doing. If you like doing deadlifts more than squats, yes, you probably should still squat, but I don't think there's anything wrong, especially if your goal is overall body composition, to work more on deadlifts. Now again, if you're competing in a sport or you're doing the sport of powerlifting, you have to squat, bench, and deadlift. So you're going to probably have to work more on your weaker lifts if you want a bigger total. But if you're not doing that, I don't think there's anything wrong with prioritizing the lifts that you want to work on. The caveat I would add is, as long as it's not causing you pain or hindering performance elsewhere. And the goals you pick are your own goals. So you get to decide what you want to do. I would also throw a plug in for doing grip stuff, because I do think that transfers to almost everything else. And like I said, my goal is to pick up the 175-pound inch dumbbell. So for people who are unfamiliar, it's a large dumbbell. It's a solid cast, single piece of metal. And the handle is about the size of a pop can. It's 2 3/8 inch. It's not so much the weight that's the issue with it. You're just doing a one-hand deadlift. So 175 pounds for one-hand deadlift on a dumbbell. For most people who train, not really that heavy. But with the handle, it just wants to spin out of your hand. And it's crazy to see at different meets and different areas where they have this, how many people are unable to do it. Even people who are very, very strong. I would say it's incredibly rare that someone would walk into a room, even people at a very high level of strength, who can pick up the inch dumbbell without training. There are those freaks that do exist, but they are incredibly rare. Even at the gym here, I've got a 100-pound version, which is junior. Maybe 50% of the people who lift could even, pick that up, which again, it's not so much the weight, it's the ability to stop the rotation. So again, if you want to get into weird stuff like that, that's cool. Like, do whatever it is you want to do. So I would say as an overall general goal at the highest level, this would be more for males. I don't remember where I got this from, but in general, the rule of, overhead press 1 plate, so that's going to be 135. Bench press 2 plates, which is 225. Squat 3 plates, which is 315. Deadlift 4 plates, which is going to be 405. I think if you were to pick and throw a dart at a wall, regardless of body weight, just numbers, you're caught in an elevator, somebody's asking what numbers they should hit, I think that's like pretty good. It's a nice even split between most of the lifts. Yes, you will have different anatomical types that, squatting may be easier than deadlifting for them, etc. But as a rough general view, I think that's pretty solid. Now, if we look at actual data on this, this is actually from strengthlevel.com. Now, we can have a debate about how valid this data is, but They do have a lot of lifts that are recorded there, so we're going to go with it for now. Like, you can find some literature that supports this and, some that kind of refutes it. But as a base standard, I think this is a pretty good data set. So we've got male bench press standards because it's Monday. Everybody wants to bench press on Monday. And for that, you can look at just total weight, or you can also look at body weight ratio. So if we take someone who is 180 pounds, for beginner, they say 1RM, 120 pounds, novice, 166, intermediate, 221, advanced, 284, and elite, 352. So I would say that's probably pretty good. Intermediate status is going to put you, right around the 225 mark there. If you scale up to a larger mammal at 220, your intermediate status there is going to be 269. Elite status is going to be 411. So I would probably generally agree with that. I think if you go to most gyms and you look around, it's not a ton of people benching 225 with, good form. Like, they're definitely there, but I would not say that's super common. Yeah, and all of this depends upon what your goals are and what you want to do. Now, if we look at that as a body weight ratio, they would say beginner 0.5, novice 0.75, intermediate 1.5, advanced 1.75, and elite 2 times. So if you were a 200-pound mammal, you wanted to be in elite status, bench press there is 400 pounds. Now again, this is all raw. This is not using any equipment or anything like that. You could argue some of this may not be the best since it's self-reported. I personally think if you look at some of this data, the bench press numbers are probably a little bit inflated, but pretty good starting point. If you look at females, beginner, they say weight 38 pounds, novice weight 70 pounds for bench press, intermediate 110, advanced 164, and elite 223. Again, if we go by body weight, so we say 140 pound athlete, intermediate status is going to be 108 pounds, elite status is going to be 209. So I think that's probably, pretty fair. Again, if we look at body weight ratio, intermediate should be 0.75, advanced to be 1. So if you're a female and you can bench press for 1 RM your body weight, that's considered advanced, which I would agree with. And elite is 1.5 times that. So I think those are some, rough numbers to look at. Now, the caveat to all this, like I said, this is kind of self-report data, but relatively fair. If we go ahead and do the squat, again, based on self-report data, if you've been at any gyms, who knows how deep these squats are actually going, but nonetheless, we go to the male standards here, and we look just generally across the board. If you are, let's say, 180 pounds, beginner 88 pounds, novice 133, intermediate 190, advanced 256, and elite 329 pounds. Now again, I know some people will say, well, by powerlifting standards, these numbers are really low, and I would agree with that. But again, these are not necessarily people who are competing in the sport of powerlifting either. If we scale up to, say, a 230-pound mammal, intermediate, you're looking at 221, and elite 371. So if anything, maybe these numbers are a little bit on the lower side. I should back up here that those numbers I just said were for females, not male. So that probably explains why they were a little bit lower than what I thought. So again, if you were 130-pound female, intermediate would be 152 pounds, advanced would be 212, and elite would be 279. So those would be for female and for squat. They put intermediate at 1.25, advanced at 1.5, and elite at 2 times. Now if we go over to male squat numbers, these are probably a little bit more what I was thinking they should be. 180-pound lifter, novice 221, intermediate 292, advanced 373, and elite 460. So again, are there power lifters, both males and females, doing more than that? Absolutely. But for most people going to the gym, again, I think these numbers will give you some ballpark. And again, the ratios they're using here are intermediate, they say is 1.5, advanced 2.25, and elite 2.75. So again, if you're, squatting twice your body weight, I would argue that's pretty darn good, especially if it's a legit squat. Now again, this could be back squat, safety squat, front squat. They're just talking about back squat, I believe, in this case. You can substitute whatever numbers and lifts you want for that. And again, this depends upon what your goals are. But to give you some ballpark where you should be, that would be the numbers for squat. For deadlift, let's flip back and start with males first. They would say that for weight, again, if we take a 180-pound male, beginner would be 195, novice 261, intermediate 340, advanced 430, and elite 525. I would probably generally agree with that. Again, I think you are definitely advanced if you are able to deadlift, 405, 430 at a body weight of 180. That's pretty good. If we scale that up to a 230-pound mammal, intermediate would put you at around 420, advanced 520, and elite would be 624. I think that's pretty fair. Again, if we go to body weight ratio, intermediate is putting you at the 2 times body weight, advanced 2.5, and elite is 3 times. Now again, this is not necessarily going to scale all the way up. If you're super heavyweight, trying to be elite status at 3 times body weight, good luck with that. But as a general across the board, I think it's pretty fair. Like I find for most guys, like the big ones are 315, 365, and 405. And again, depends upon what your goals are, what you want to achieve. For females, what they have here is, if we look at weight, so if we go to 140-pound female, beginner 86, novice 131, intermediate 189, advanced 257, and elite 331. Again, if they're using body weight ratio, they call it novice would be deadlift your body weight, intermediate would be 1.25, advanced 1.75, and elite 2.5. So on the elite side, if you take, let's say, a 160-pound female, elite deadlift would be 353. And so I think those are, relatively fair. Again, self-report, all that kind of stuff. And they do list how many lifts this is based on. So you can go to strengthlevel.com. I don't have any disclosures, relationship with them at all. But kind of a cool place just to look to see, how you rank for each one. You can also type in other lifts that they have there. And it's pretty cool. Now again, these are just using power lifts, the squat, bench, and dead. If you have issues, I would modify this for some people, especially if they're older. I would look at either a neutral bar or neutral grip, or maybe even AMRAP on push-ups or dumbbell bench press. For squat, my bias is I like a safety squat bar, or even a front squat better. Back squat, a lot of people I find have not a lot of external rotation movement-wise, may have some compensations there. And the squatting motion I do think is very critical. You can even go with, you'll progressively work up to heavier goblet squats, I think are underrated. You can hold the bar out in front and the crooks of your elbows, such as a Zercher squat, which again I think is a very underrated version, and generally I think is better for most people if you don't have access to specialty bars. So one thing my coach Adam was having me do is heavy goblet squats with the 100-pound inch replica. And that's pretty challenging. It's not as much lower body stuff. It's a little bit more a core and trying to get everything in position and hold that heavy of an odd weight in front of you. But yeah, pretty challenging. And on the deadlift, if you feel pretty good with form, yes, I think you can use a straight bar. I don't think that's going to be injuryless at all. The idea is, because the load is more out in front of you, you want to make sure that your form is appropriate for you. But for most people, I do like the trap bar a little bit better. I think it allows you to have a better position. It's going to move the center of mass more underneath you. Does put your back at a little bit less of a risk. Again, I don't think doing a straight bar is inherently super dangerous as long as you know what you're doing. But for most people, I do like the trap bar version better, or even like higher handle farmers bars, deadlifts, I think is a great version also. So those are some versions there. That is the Feats of Strength. I want to wish all of you a very happy Festivus. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We got a bunch more guests coming up next year. Working to get Cal Dietz on here at some point to talk about the Triphasic 2 book, which is out on Amazon right now. It is 14 brand new methods for elite physical development. The goal here is looking at the whole training process, from how you warm up to how you train to how you transfer to get that performance on the field for athletics. I was a co-author on this. It took way longer to get out than what we wanted. I actually started on it like 9 years ago, but super stoked that it's out now. All the feedback we've gotten so far on it's been awesome. So really appreciate everyone who picked up that book. Thank you so much. If you want to pick that up, you can go to triphasic2.com, which is www.triphasic2.com. So check that out. We've got a bunch more other podcasts in the works also coming up. Again, thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful and very Merry Christmas. Talk to you again very soon.
That was a great number. I don't care what you say.
I thought it was dumb.
Maybe you're right.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. The podcast is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should not use the information on the podcast for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease or prescribing any medication or other treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider before taking any medication or nutritional supplement, and with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this or any other podcast. Reliance on the podcast is solely at your own risk. Information provided on the podcast does not create a doctor-patient relationship between you and any of the health professionals affiliated with our podcast. Information and statements regarding dietary supplements are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to therein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.